students, this is Mrs. Crumpton. This is your video lesson for section 7.1b, not 7.2b. And this lesson is called Classifying Angles. Your learning target, I can classify angles and identify vertical and adjacent angles. Now for this lesson there's going to be tons of vocabulary terms. So please be sure that you write these vocabulary terms down. You will have a vocabulary test in this section alone. Your first vocabulary term is vertex. A vertex is a point where two rays meet. Now this particular term was not in your textbook, but I felt like if you've got a ray in a definition, you need to know what a ray is. A ray is a part of a line with one end point. Congruent. We say that two angles are congruent if they have the same measure. Now we're going to be talking about several different types of angles. First off, we're going to talk about acute angles. And I have an illustration there for you. An acute angle is an angle that measures less than 90 degrees. A right angle is an angle that measures exactly 90 degrees. An obtuse angle measures between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. And a straight angle is an angle measuring exactly 180 degrees. Now there's some cute little things that I like to say to help you remember these types of angles. Acute angle is a little angle, kind of like a cute little baby. This is a cute little baby angle. Look at it, how cute it is. It is a cute little angle. Oh, how sweet. A 90-degree angle, of course, we discussed that in section 7.1a. If it's got this little square here, then you know that that is a right angle, and its measure is exactly 90 degrees. An obtuse angle is an angle measuring between 90 and 180 degrees. I like to associate this word obtuse with a word that none of us like, called obese. And when somebody is obese, that means they're big. So an obtuse angle means that we have a big angle. And of course a straight angle, hopefully you'll associate straight line with straight angle, and they're both straight. Alright, make sure you get your notes and your vocabulary for these. Pause the video if you missed a definition, and make sure that you go back and write that down, because like I said, you will have a vocabulary test. Here are some examples for pairs of angles, definitions and examples. Vertical angles are opposite angles formed by intersecting lines. Adjacent angles are angles that share a common vertex and a common side, and they do not overlap. Okay, let's look at an illustration here for vertical angles. Vertical angles by definition are opposite angles formed by intersecting lines. Here I have intersecting lines. Now by definition it says opposite angles. So let's start with angle number 1 here. What is the angle opposite of angle number 1? Directly across from it, opposite, would be angle 3. So, my vertical angles here, angle 1 and angle 3, and guess what? They're that word from just a few minutes ago called congruent. Vertical angles are congruent, and you need to know that. So angle 1, that's my symbol for angle, is congruent. Now congruent is an equal sign with a little squiggly over it. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Well, there's two more vertical angles here. Angle 2 and angle 4. And vertical angles, again, are congruent. So we can say that angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. It's pretty easy to handle these vertical angles, identifying them. Now let's talk about adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are angles that share a common vertex and a common side. Now here's your illustration. Here I've got some adjacent angles. They share a common vertex and a common side. Well, the vertex is here for your angles. They share a common vertex and a common side. Now with angle 1 and 2, they share this common vertex and they share this common side. Therefore, angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. Now, adjacent angles can be congruent, but for what I'm talking about right now, I've tried to draw these where they're not congruent. Now, if we went back to vertical angles, we would see some angles that are congruent. Now, there's some more adjacent angles here. Angle 2 and angle 3, they share a common vertex and they share a common side. Therefore, angle 2 and angle 3 are adjacent. Here's another one pair. Angle 3 and angle 4. Here's their common vertex. Here's their common side. Therefore, angle 3 and angle 4 are adjacent. And lastly, angle 4 and angle 1. Here's your common vertex. Here's your common side. So we can say that angle 4 and angle 1 are adjacent. Make sure you've got these examples in your notes so that when I give you a formative assessment, if you need to refer back to your notes, you can. Now, we're not quite done with this lesson, so I'm going to pause the video for just a minute so that you can make sure you've got your definitions and your notes and your illustrations. Alright students, let's look at a little bit of a real-world example here about vertical angles and adjacent angles. We have a sewing example, and we're asked to identify a pair of vertical angles and adjacent angles in the diagram and to justify your response. Now, I know when my grandmother used to quilt, I used to love to look at the sewing lines on her quilts, and there is tons and tons of vertical and adjacent and all kinds of lines and quilts. Get one and look at it sometime. Identify a pair of vertical angles, okay? It says a pair. It doesn't say every pair. It says a pair of vertical angles. So, do you see a pair of vertical angles here? Now think back to our definition of vertical angles, that they are opposite angles formed by the intersection of two lines. Do you see a pair of angles here? How about angle 3 and 5? They're formed by two lines and they are opposite. So we can say that angle 3 and angle 5 are vertical because they are formed by two lines and are opposite of each other. Use your words here. When you're asked to justify, you do have to provide an example. Or you have to give me some kind of statement telling me why you think these two are vertical lines. Okay, and the next part of this says that we've got to identify a pair of adjacent angles. Now, adjacent angles, we had our definition just a minute ago. They share a common vertex and a common side. Hey, look at these angles. We've already said that 3 and 5 are vertical, so they can't be adjacent. How about 3 and 4? Do they share a common vertex? Right here. Do they share a common side? There we go. So we can say that angle 3 and angle 4 are adjacent because they share a common vertex and a common side. Do you see another pair of adjacent angles? I do. I'm going to leave you to think on that one. I may ask you that question when you get back to class. Students, on this example, we're going to find missing angle measures. Now, think back to what we learned about vertical angles just a few minutes ago. Vertical angles are formed by intersecting lines, and they are opposite of each other. Take a look at this illustration. We can find some vertical angles here if you look real closely. Vertical angles are formed by intersecting lines, and they are opposite of each other. So if this angle measures 120 degrees, and we know these to be vertical angles, it's real easy. You have to do absolutely no calculation on this problem. If this angle is 120 degrees, and this angle is a vertical angle from that angle, then angle X is also 120 degrees. What do you think about angle Y? What's this angle measure going to be? I know this is too easy. Yes, it's 60 degrees. Not too bad, huh? Pause the video for just a second. Make sure you get your notes. Okay, students, it's time for your formative assessment. I have some problems here pulled up. If you will pause the video and take a snapshot of this page here, then you won't have to worry about your textbook. Of course, this comes from your Math Connects Course 3 provided by Glencoe McGraw-Hill. Don't want to get in any copyright issues here. This is page, I can't read that, so let me look at my book. This is page 398. I would like for you to try numbers 1 through 9 as your formative assessment. Remember, you're not going to have to do very much work here. So this should take you maybe 5 minutes or so. So make sure you try these, and I will see you in class, and we'll take care of your questions.